In music, there are only 12 notes. In a simple digital color picker, there are over 16 million colors. Because of this, color is elusive, mysterious, and can be very difficult to control and understand. What color is this? What color is this? What color is this? Part of the problem in understanding color is terminology. Color has characteristics, and the better you understand those characteristics, the better choices you will make in selecting and mixing colors. Why do I say color is mysterious? Let's start with a characteristic that everyone should be familiar with: value. In black and gray work, value is the only characteristic that needs to be understood to create realistic artwork. The decision-making process revolves around asking yourself, does the area I am working on need to be lighter or darker than the previous area? Which one is lighter? Which one is darker? Which one is lighter? Pretty easy, right? Now let's look at some color comparisons. Which one is lighter? Which one is darker? Which one is lighter? Which one is darker? Using a digital color picker, we can see the exact value of each color. In this picker from the Procreate app, value is represented by the color placement in the vertical direction, as well as by the value slider here. Sampling both of these colors reveals that they have the exact same value. This is one of the many reasons why I say colors are mysterious. To understand these mysteries means we need to examine color more deeply and adopt better terminology to make working with color more manageable. Look at these two colors. Which one is lighter? At first glance, this one appears to be much lighter, but if I change the background color to be the same for both, we can see that they are both the exact same color. This starts to help us unravel the mystery of color. We can't just look at a color and know for certain what it is. Our brains process color based on the other colors surrounding that color. A very light background will make a dark color look darker, and a very dark background will make a light color look lighter. Well, that's annoying. It's like we have a handicap that impedes our desire to create realistic art. Yes, we do. And yet people have been creating realistic art. So we just have to find some workarounds. We have to better understand color. I personally believe the digital color picker is a tool that has revolutionized the art world. Before the color picker, artists would cut out small windows in black cardboard and then hold the cardboard up towards a subject, peering through the window in an attempt to isolate a color. They would mix their color and hold it next to the window, trying to see how close the color is to their subject. Nowadays, we can just sample any color at will from a photo and know all the characteristics immediately. I keep saying characteristics of color. We already know one: value. How do we talk about the value of a color? Well, we use the terms high and low and medium. For example, this is a high value red. This is a low value red. This is a medium value red. We could also say this is a medium high value red. This is a medium low value red. When we compare colors to each other, we can say this color is higher in value than this one, or this color is lower in value than this one. Value refers to which one is lighter and which one is darker. Lighter, darker. That is value. Play a game with yourself. Gather some color photos. Create a black background layer. Make a new layer and paint swatches on the layer from random sampled colors in the photos. Make 15 swatches per photo. Now write under each swatch what you think the value is. When you're finished, open up the color picker and sample each swatch so that you can see what the actual value is. How close were you? Grade yourself. How many did you miss? Keep practicing this exercise over the next few weeks until you can easily get 100% correct every time. I missed all the highs and medium highs. I'm going to turn the saturation down so I can better understand why I missed all those. I can see the grays a little bit better than I could with the colors, but one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background color from black to a gray. And now I can really see, oh yeah, those are definitely medium highs. Those weren't highs. So that also goes to show how much the background color plays in being able to determine color. So just know that you can keep training your eye until you can pick these values out without even thinking about it. There are two other characteristics of color that must be learned and understood. The next one I will talk about is hue. Hue is easy to understand. When asked, "What color is this?" the answer is usually the hue. So instead I will ask, "What hue is this?" What hue is this? What hue is this? Hue is best kept simple. Stick to primary and secondary colors when talking about hue. Primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. Secondary colors are when you mix the primaries together, so orange, green, and purple. When declaring a color's hue, these are the 6 terms you should use. You can combine the terms as well to further define the hue. For example, the hue of this color could be declared as yellow-orange. This one could be red-orange. In Procreate's digital color picker, as well as Photoshop, the hue can be found by looking at the upper right corner, as well as the hue slider. What hue is this? What hue is this? What hue is this? What hue is this? These ones were a little trickier. Identifying hue takes some practice. Play a game with yourself. Gather some color photos. Make a new layer and paint swatches on the layer from random sampled colors in the photos. Make 15 swatches per photo. Create a neutral gray background layer. Now, write under each swatch what you think the hue is. When you're finished, open up the color picker and sample each swatch so that you can see what the actual hue is. How close were you? Grade yourself. How many did you miss? Keep practicing this exercise over the next few weeks until you can easily get 100% correct every time. The third characteristic of color is called chroma. Just like value, chroma is described using the terms high, low, and medium. So what is chroma? It's the intensity or purity of a color. This is a high chroma red. It's pure red. This is a low chroma red. This is a medium chroma red. Mixing a color with white, black, or gray will decrease its chroma. In Procreate's digital color picker, as well as Photoshop, the chroma is represented by the horizontal placement of the color, as well as the chroma slider. Familiarize yourself with the chroma of colors. Understand the high chroma colors, then learn to identify the lower chroma colors. Same game. Gather some color photos. Make a new layer and paint swatches on the layer from random sampled colors in the photos. Make 15 swatches per photo. Create a neutral gray background layer. Now, write under each swatch what you think the chroma is. When you're finished, open up the color picker and sample each swatch so that you can see what the actual chroma is. How close were you? Grade yourself. How many did you miss? Keep practicing this exercise over the next few weeks until you can easily get 100% correct every time. The last game to play is just like before, only this time you will be identifying all 3 characteristics for each swatch of color. Change the background color of your swatches and notice how it changes your perception of color. A black background makes all the colors look more chromatic and brighter, whereas a white background makes them look less chromatic and not as bright. When you can consistently identify random colors correctly in this manner, then you are ready to move on to the next lesson. Until then, keep practicing these exercises. It is important that these concepts be understood before moving forward. Otherwise, you will struggle. I use 3 steps for mixing colors. 1. Identify the hue. 2. Determine a value. And 3. Decide on the chroma intensity. We have 6 colors to choose from when deciding on a hue. When we select a hue, we can fine-tune our choice by pushing it in one direction or the other. For example, I will select orange as a hue. I can push the hue one step in this direction towards red, or I can push it one step in the other direction towards yellow. If I have an orange hue that I want to push towards yellow, I can simply add yellow to it. And if I want to push the orange towards red, then I would add red to it. If I have a blue that I want to push towards green, I can add green to it. And if I want to push the blue towards purple, I can add purple to it. High plus low equals medium. A low value added to a high value will cause the high value to decrease. A high value added to a low value will cause the low value to increase. If we assign numbers to the attribute's range, for example, let's say low chroma is 1 and high chroma is 5. Let's say low value is 1 and high value is 5. If I have 2 colors I want to mix together, the first has chroma 4 and the second has chroma 2, the resulting mixed color will have a chroma of 3. If I add more of the high chroma color into the mix, the resulting chroma will increase. If I add more of the low chroma color into the mix, the resulting chroma will decrease. Same with value. If the first has value 5 and the second has value 2, the resulting mixed color will have value 3.5. And if I add more of the high value color into the mix, the resulting value will increase. If I add more of the low value color into the mix, the resulting value will decrease. The easiest way to decrease chroma from a color is by adding gray. If the gray is similar in value to the color being mixed with it, the only change will be reduced chroma. If the value of the gray is lower than the color being mixed with it, the resulting color will have less chroma and lower value. And if the value of the gray is higher than the color being mixed with it, the resulting color will have less chroma and higher value. To increase the chroma of a color, it has to be mixed with a color that has higher chroma. Just remember that mixing 2 colors will adjust all 3 attributes: hue, value, and chroma. I am going to try to mix colors from this painting. Here I have decided that the hue for this region is blue. I have a blue color to start my mix. Next, I see that the value of the region is very high. The color I want to mix looks very light. I also see that the chroma is low. The blue is not very intense. So I need to mix colors with my blue that will raise the value and also lower the chroma. I decide to mix my blue with a very high value gray. This will raise the value and also lower the chroma of my blue color. After mixing my blue with gray, I can see that the value of my new color looks good and the chroma looks good, but it still doesn't seem to match. If chroma and value look good, the only attribute left to consider is hue. Since I am using blue, I have 2 options. I can shift the hue towards purple, or I can shift it towards green. I choose to shift it towards green because it seems to be the better choice. I add a little green to the mix, and now my color looks more correct. Since adding green increased the chroma, I can add some more gray to decrease it, and now my mixed color is complete. If the majority of the colors in your art piece will not be high chroma,
choose lower chroma hues to start with. Let's mix another color, a midtone from her face. Step 1 is to identify the hue, and I feel like the hue could be orange. Next, I need to decide the value and chroma. I think the orange needs to go up in value, and I think it needs to go down in chroma. To decrease chroma, I can mix it with gray, and to raise the value, I can pick a gray that is lighter in value than the orange. After mixing the lighter value gray with the orange, I get a color that is pretty close. But I can get it closer. I think my new color needs a little more chroma, and I think I should shift the hue towards red a little. So I mix in some red. The resulting color is still not quite there. It looks like it needs to come up in value. I can use white to raise the value, but I know that white will also decrease the chroma. So I decide to add white and some orange and red so that the value will go up and the chroma will stay the same. The resulting color is close enough for my tastes. Now, let's pick a color from the shadow side of her face. I decide that the hue is again close to orange. I immediately know that I must reduce the value a lot. I could choose a dark gray, but because the orange is such a high value, I know that mixing a dark and a light equals out to a medium. I decide to mix the orange with black to see what I get. Not bad. The resulting color is very close in value. It looks like it could use more chroma though, and also maybe shift it towards red a little. Mixing in some red would solve both problems by adding red and chroma. It might raise the value though because the red is a higher value. Yep, it did indeed raise the value. And the chroma now seems a bit much. I decide to mix in a darker gray to drop the value and the chroma. And now the mixed color looks very close. Let's find a color in this painting. There's a greenish looking patch on the distant hills that I want to try and mix. I decide that the hue is green. The values seem very close to me, but the green has too much chroma. So I decide to mix it with a similar value gray to maintain the value but drop the chroma. After mixing it, I realize that I have chosen the wrong hue. That greenish looking patch was not green at all. So I move over one step on the color scale and this time I choose yellow. I mix it with the same mid-value gray, and now the two look closer. But my color is higher in value and lower in chroma. I have to think about this. I need to add chroma and drop value. I can add chroma by mixing it with a color that has more chroma than it. My only option is to mix it with yellow to increase the chroma. And to drop the value, I need a darker gray. So I realize that I used the wrong gray for my first mix. I should have used a darker gray. I try it, and to my surprise, I was right. The darker gray and yellow produce a color that is almost identical. Now that I'm feeling cocky, I decide I can get it even closer. My color needs just a touch more chroma, and it needs to shift towards orange just slightly. If I mix in orange, it might be too much chroma, so I decide to mix the orange with a similar value gray to keep the chroma from adding too much, and the resulting color is almost a perfect match.
So I'm going to start with just the primaries. Primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. These are primaries because these colors cannot be mixed from other colors. All the other colors can be mixed from these colors. So these are hues. These are 3 hues: blue, red, yellow. We can mix any other hue from these colors, which is good. However, we can't exactly mix every single color if we factor in value and chroma.
because these all have a specific value right now. This is a higher value, this is more of a medium value, and this is more of a lower value. So mixing these is going to change the value. I'm going to put some black here. We can use that to drop the value. And then I've got some white. We can use this to increase the value. So mixing white with any of these colors is going to make them lighter, and mixing black with any of those colors is going to make them darker. The third characteristic to consider is chroma. These are all pretty high chroma. These hues are they're intense, they're bright, they're not dulled down. The problem is, once we start mixing, the minute you mix black with any of these to drop the value, it's also going to reduce the chroma. Same with white. If you mix white with any of these colors, it's going to make them lighter, but it's also going to reduce their chroma. White and black make gray. We use gray to reduce the chroma of a color. So if I have a few different values of gray, a light, a medium, and a dark, I can use that to help control the value. So if I have a color that is very similar in value to this, let's say the red, if I mix this with this, it's not going to affect the value because their values are so similar. So I can maintain the value of my red, but I can reduce the chroma. Let's just get a little bit of black. A little bit of black with a lot more white to hopefully get a lighter value. The more black I add to white, the darker it's going to be. So I add just a little bit of black, that's going to give me a higher value gray. And then if I have just a little bit of white and I add a lot more black, that's going to give me a darker gray. So for this particular example, I want to set up a palette that covers my darks to my mediums to my lights. And I need to analyze this so that I can get colors that are close to what's represented in my reference image. Looking at my darks, they're more red. They look more red in the darks. As it comes up over the cheek, this area is more red. And then notice how it goes up into the lights. Everything looks a little more yellow. So by establishing that early on, that helps me figure out what hues to start with, because we always start with hue, value, chroma, in that order. So I identify the hue first. So if I want to start mixing my color in the darks, I'm going to start with red. I'm going to start with red, see what I get, and then adjust it accordingly until I get it close to what I want. So this is low value. I'm going to start with some red, and I'm going to drop the value. I could mix this with the dark gray to start knocking down the chroma of this color, because this isn't a high chroma dark red. So I can actually take some of this gray here and mix it in, and that's going to drop the value of this red. And it's also going to reduce the chroma. If I want to reduce the chroma even more, I can mix in a little bit more of the gray. And if I need to drop it down even further, if that still doesn't seem dark enough, I can mix in some black. So now I want to move up in value. I want to come up. So when I come up into these lighter regions, as I start coming up from the dark, to me it still looks red. So again, I'm going to grab some red. I'm going to start with red, that's my hue. And then from there, I'm going to adjust it. So I need to drop the value. Remember, hue, value, chroma. So I've got my hue. Now I want to adjust the value. It's obviously too high. It needs to come down in value. This time, I can try some of this gray. So that way it drops the value, but not as much as it did here. And again, dropping the chroma as well. This red is way too vibrant. It's way too red. So when I mix this up, I can see that it is still way too light. So perhaps I should have used this gray. And another thing I can look at is if the hue needs to shift at all. On the color spectrum, on either side of red, one side there is orange and one side there is purple. Remember, purple is in between red and blue. If you mix red and blue together, you get purple. And orange is in between yellow and red. If you mix red and yellow together, you get orange. So I have to remember that I can shift my red one direction or the other if the color still doesn't seem quite right. So looking at this, knowing that, okay, this color that I have, is it correct? Is the hue correct? Do I need to shift it at all? And if I do need to shift it, which direction do I go? Do I go towards blue or do I go towards yellow? Yellow is going to make it more orange. Blue is going to make it more purple. Well, when I look at this and I say, well, what if I go towards orange? No, that doesn't seem right. This seems cooler in this area. So if I do want to shift it, I'm probably going to shift it towards blue. So I can grab a little bit of blue and mix this in to shift this red a little bit, cool it down. So that's going from dark to light. So let's go up even higher. As we get up higher, to me it feels like it's starting to get more towards yellow. So maybe it's more orange in here. So for orange, we know we mix red and yellow. And red is going to completely overpower this yellow when I mix them together. Kind of like how black completely overpowers white. So I'm going to use just a little bit of red and a lot more yellow to start with. See, as you can see, the red is very, very overpowering with yellow. So now that I've mixed this up, because these are both high chroma colors, they're both intense, this color is also intense. So I, again, am going to need to knock that chroma down. I also need to knock the value down. I'm slowly coming up in value as I do this. So let's take some of this gray and mix it in and try and knock this value down. Now, as you can see here, this had an unexpected effect. The yellow, when you drop it in value, starts to look almost greenish. But we got to remember, this isn't a green, this is just a low value yellow. So what that tells me is I need to add more red to it to help counteract that. Because it looked like such a low value yellow, then that means there's more yellow in there. And I'm mixing yellow and red. So if there's too much yellow, then I add more red. Now this is a back and forth process because obviously adding more red increases the chroma. So I've got to add more gray to help knock down the chroma. And it still seems pretty chromatic. Let's take some of this gray here to maybe try and bring the value up, but still try and knock that chroma down. I'm going to put in a little bit of white and a little bit more black since I've run out of my gray here. So at this point, if I'm happy with the value, I've got dark slowly coming up. As long as this is a little bit lighter than this, as long as I keep mixing this with a gray that is similar in value, then I can keep knocking the chroma down. So let me mix up some more gray. So I ran out over here. Get a little bit more black in there. If it's too light, add a little bit more black. A little bit more black. Check the value. If they're similar, I'm going to go ahead and mix these two. Now this is not enough gray to fully knock the chroma down as much as I'd like because there's so much paint here and so little here. So I can add a little bit here and just pull in some from here and mix them together so I can achieve the effect faster. Pull a little bit more. Now that has really knocked the chroma down quite a bit if you can compare these two. I might want to add just a touch more red just to get it a little more red, a little bit more chroma. And so for there, let's go up in value more. Now I feel like same process, we're getting more up into the orange range. Let's grab a little bit of yellow, some red to mix up an orange again. And then let's add some white to raise the value and start knocking that chroma down. Again, that seems a little too chromatic. It's coming up in value quite abruptly. Let me add a little bit of black. Because remember, black and white make gray. So that's all I'm doing here. And that might be a little too gray. So I can bring a little bit of chroma back into it. A little more yellow, a little more red. So again, coming up in value. Getting up into these lighter regions. This time I'm going to want to use a lot more white because again, we're coming up in value. So it's almost like I'm adding white to this color. And then looking at my reference, do I need to shift it? Do I need to add a little bit more red? Do I need to add a little bit more yellow? So now that I have these colors, let's see how they play together. So there's my dark area around that cheek. I'll just bring it up a little bit like this. And then from here, I want to go up in value as I come up over the cheek. So I'm going to take this next color, again I'm going up in value, and I'm going to put it right next to this one. Then I'm going to go up in value. Now I'm going to my next value color. Maybe I need to put a little bit more of this right along that transition edge where those two come together. Coming up in value. And last but not least, our highest value. How would you mix those eyes? The eye color. They definitely seem like they sit in the blue family, right? So let's just start with some blue. Let's figure this out. Let's start with blue. I put some blue here. Comparing the two, I can immediately see that this is way too chromatic. We need to reduce the chroma. And it's almost too blue. We need to shift the hue. Again, just looking here, we can either shift it towards red or we can shift it towards yellow. These just repeat. These are the three primary colors. So does it look like I need to push it towards red or do I need to push it towards yellow? Because those are the only choices I have. I can tell that this is not the right blue. It's too blue. It needs to be shifted one way or the other. Well, reason it out. If I shift it towards red, blue and red make purple. So if I shift it towards red, it's going to look more purple. And that's not what I want. This doesn't look purple. So I need to shift it towards yellow. That's my other option. So if I take some yellow and mix these together, obviously blue and yellow make green. So that may be too much. That's too green. Let's put a little bit more blue back into it. Now what's next? Hue, value, chroma. We're getting the hue down, so next we got to work on value. This is too dark. I'm just focusing on the inner part of the eye. This is too dark. We need to bring it up in value. So we can do that by adding white. And let's pull a little bit of that mixture into it. How's the value look? Not bad. Let's get some of the other values in, because that's our light. Let's get our dark value in. So with our dark value, let's get some black. And again, let's pull some of this blue into it. Let's get blue and black mixed together for that dark area. And then as it comes up in value, we need a medium value, which again to me looks blue. Let's start with some blue. But again, that's too chromatic, it's too vibrant, and it's also too dark. So let's take some gray, like a little bit lighter value gray. Let's get some black, let's get some more white. And let's mix that in with the blue to knock that chroma down. And again, it looks a little too blue, so maybe we can take a little bit of this mixture here to start to shift it more towards yellow. Add a little bit more of this blue to increase the chroma. Maybe a little bit more of this to darken it down. And now let's see what we got. So this was our darker. There's our darker value. And then let's go into this value. Around that edge. Go back into this. Go back into this darker color. Right up here. And so there we've established the darks, mediums, and lights for this element. The tricky one, because we always want to do the whites of the eyes white, those are definitely not white. This white almost has a bluish tinge to it. Let me grab some white. And let's add just a touch of blue to it. Because we'll need to shift the hue a little bit towards blue. That seems too blue. Let's add a little bit, let's shift it. Again, we can either shift it towards yellow or we can shift it towards red. I don't want to shift it towards red because that doesn't look purple. So let's shift it towards yellow. Just take a touch of yellow. Again, still a little too blue. That may have been too much yellow. So let's add, again, a little bit more white to help knock down that chroma. Back and forth. Got to add a little bit more blue. So now you can see just adding a little bit has completely increased the chroma too much. Let's get some more white. We add a little bit of that. I still think it's too chromatic. Add a little bit of white. And let's drop the value just a tad. Let's get a little bit of black in there. That's going to help knock that chroma down more and also drop the value. So that's for the brighter side of the eye. As we come over here, we need to drop in value even more. Let's grab a little bit more black and grab a piece of this and mix that in here. Let's grab some of this because this is too gray now. Grab a little bit more white just to bring it up in value. Because one side of the white of the eye is darker than the other. So then I can take this, put it on this side here. And then let's take the other side, this one, and put it on the other side here. And I feel like it can be even darker. So let's grab a little bit of that gray from over there. That'll darken this up for this side. And then you can see there's a little bit of a variation in the lighter side. It's a little darker up here. And also under here and around the pupil. And also on this side here. Gets a lot darker back there. Let's take this black, bring it down a little bit. You know, up above the eye there is a region that looks to me very red. A lot more chromatic. So let's take a little bit of red. And let's see if we can get that color. Definitely needs to come down in value. And then it seems pretty red. My mixture seems much more red. I need to shift it. Do I shift it towards yellow? Do I shift it towards blue? Definitely seems more towards blue. That's not very orange. It's almost pushing purple. So let's add a little bit of blue to this. Still seems a little vibrant. Let's knock the chroma down. I think it needs to come up in value just a bit, so let's grab a little bit of white. That's going to help knock the chroma down and also bring it up in value a little bit. A little bit more white. Maybe a little bit more red. And that color is going to go right in here like this. And then it gets much darker around it. So let's take some black mixed with it so that it's still got a little bit of that redness to it. That's going to come, looks like around that area there. It's going to encase that little bit of red. It's going to envelop it and come between the eye and that red area I just did. And then let's come back to this color. I've still had the black, so I mixed the black with this. So that's going to create an intermediary value between the two. Going back to my black, will come out of this. It goes back into black over here. And this whole region is nice and dark. And we get even, that black has some red mixed into it, so I get even more black as I come away from this area. Get this all nice and dark. And there's a little spot up here where we can see a higher value. It's not as red though. To me, that looks like that's going to be pushing more towards orange. Let's take some of this yellow and see if we can mix it with this mixture and get this a little more orange. And it's not very chromatic at all, so we want to gray it up. Some black, some more white. And that's going to be right through here. And then let's go back to the black. And then let's mix in that color a little bit more to come in between these two so that it goes from a lighter value to a medium to a dark rather quickly. And already after I've done that, I can see that this value is too light. It's way too light. I'm going to have to darken that down. It also looks like it gets a little more red as it gets darker as it comes down into this shadow. So let's grab a little bit of that mixture there that has the red in it. Even this one here. Underneath the eye, very red. Take some of this red. And we need to drop the chroma. Let's take some black and some white. That looked like I had a little bit of blue in it, which is fine because I needed to shift the red towards blue anyway. Let's get a little bit more red in there. We'll start coming underneath the eye here. The lightest part is towards the front. And then as it wraps around, it gets darker. So let's add a little bit of black to that mixture, which demolishes the chroma. So let's add a little bit more red in there. A little bit more red, maybe just a touch of blue to shift it so that it gets darker, more chromatic as it comes around. Gets even darker still as it comes to the back. But again, I want a little bit of chroma in there. So as it comes back here, it's still got some red to it. So that's going from light to medium to dark. And then getting really dark in the back as it tucks in to this darker area back here. Comes around the other way. Again, I could probably still use this color here and add some more red to it. So we come around this way. Seems like it's much more chromatic through here. It's going to get darker and it almost looks like it's shifting more towards blue. So let's get some blue in there as it comes through here. A little bit more red. And we'll just tie that all into that shadow shape up there. Little mote in the eye. Even the mote, the little highlights in the eye are not completely white. My white's demolished up here. You know, they've got just this hint of the green in it. Maybe just a hint of it right through here.